Mic in one hand and clicker in another. I'll be juggling pretty soon. All right, so this morning we are continuing our series on the Joy Bus. And I think what's really fun about the Joy Bus, what's fun about traveling through Philippians is seeing the example that Paul has set up of reaching out to as many people as possible. You think of all the people that he has reached. If you read the book of Acts, he reaches his fellow people. He reaches people he would never talk to. He talks to his enemies and shares the love of Jesus Christ with them, even as they're spitting on him and persecuting him. As they want him dead, he is still witnessing Jesus Christ to them. And frankly, I love Pastor Scott's quote. He mentioned this to me today, and I've heard it a few times. You're not done until you're dead. It's a big statement. But Paul, when he's talking about that, he's not done until he's dead. He keeps going strong. He goes through so many different forms of persecution. He goes through so many different troubles. And he still keeps the main thing the main thing. The Joy Bus is about finding joy in the middle of tribulation. Joy is not tested until it really matters. It's hard to be joyful when things just don't work, right? How many of you can say that you are joyful when you're feeling depressed? How many of you can say that you're joyful when you feel angry? When everything around you screams, I should be angry or I should be depressed. Can you still be joyful? You can be, but it's not easy, right? This is the kind of hope, this is the kind of vision that Paul is trying to give us. As we're looking through Philippians, it is a book of joy that is tested well. So today the sermon title is A Long Way Forward in the Right Direction. And we are looking to be joyful in a negative world. And that God wants you to enjoy the ride of your life and that you're invited to ride the Joy Bus with us. Now, before I get to why Pokemon's on the screen, bear with me. I remember this commercial from a while back from J.G. Wentworth, back when commercials were a big thing on TV. Any of you still watch TV? Do you have cable? It's so expensive now. There are like 10,000 channels. I don't know how you pick one. But anyways, there was this commercial I remember where these people were running up to the window and they were screaming, I'm angry and I want my money now. Any of you remember that commercial? It was, there you go. But like the big question is like, what are we looking for in our day to day? They were looking for their money. I see all these back of the car bumper stickers that say, end violence, stop hate, and they're great sentiments. They're big sentiments, but how do you get there? What are we looking for on our day-to-day basis? Peace is a big thing that we're looking for a lot of the time. I think that's fair to say. World peace sounds great. There's a few times that we got close to it. After the First World War and the Second World War with the creation of the League of Nations and the United Nations, there was a little bit of unity there. The Olympics, even though it's combative in its own right, people are still there for a common reason. They're playing by the rules, hopefully. After natural disasters like the wildfires in Canada and Maui, and the earthquakes that have happened in Europe this year, people came together and supported each other. 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, we came together in different ways. And lastly, Pokemon Go. Why is that there? In 2016, when this came out, so many people downloaded this game, and they were all unified playing one thing, and one of the things I kept seeing online at all points for at least the first couple days to a week is that we were the closest to world peace that we could ever be. Because everybody was doing something common and similar. You can agree with me or not, but that's just what the online says. You have to believe everything on the internet. But with all of these things, peace and unity only last for a short time, until it's replaced by the next thing or divisiveness. When we think of Pokemon Go, there's something interesting, though, that comes up. Augmented reality. Are you pretty familiar with AR? So it's this idea where if you put on the glasses or if you point your phone at something, you could look at what's in front of you, and something is there that isn't there but is there. Sound funny, right? So, for example, with Pokemon Go, you point your phone around and a little creature pops up. Great. It's exciting. But I want you to hang on to that idea of augmented reality, because no matter where you look inside of this game, these creatures would appear on everyday objects. I could point my phone and I could look at Butch and there could be that little Pikachu creature on top of his head. That'd be great. But Pokemon Go is, even though it's not a unifier anymore, the idea of augmented reality still unifies us. Probably not the way you would like. You see, in our days, bad news follows us. Depression and anger, loneliness, fatigue, busyness, and the ceaseless drive for success, and much more. Some good things and some bad things are in front of us. We can all look at the same picture and think something different, because we all have a different perception of what's in front of us. We are augmented by the reality of sin. Wherever we are in our faith, this still affects us in a fallen world. And we try to hang on to joy, or at least contentment for dear life, but that augmented reality of sin is never very far, and it can easily consume us. So here's the question. Even if everything goes right in our days, do you ever get that feeling inside of you where something is left wanting, that little pit inside of you at the end of the day? You ever feel that? I can't be the only one. Anybody feel that? Sure. What do you do with that? What do we do with that kind of feeling? On the negative side, we distract ourselves or throw ourselves into our desires so as to not think about it anymore. But there's a funny, untranslatable German word. There's no single English word for this. But it's a description which says, I'm sure it's hard to read, but I'll read it for you. The German word is Sehnsucht. Can you say that with me? Sehnsucht. It's almost like an inhale, exhale. Let's try that one more. Sehnsucht. Sehnsucht means an inconsolable longing in the human heart for we know not what. A yearning for a far familiar, non-earthly land one can identify as one's home. If you have faith in Jesus Christ, something is left inside of you for a future hope that we hang on to. It's that pit inside of you that you know that there's something more, but it turns into a hope that radically shapes how you live out the rest of your life. If you are without Jesus, it feels like an empty void. So what I want to talk about today, my notes are popping up. Sorry about that. You're not allowed to see those. What I want to talk about today, the big idea, is to live is Christ and to die is gain. It's a big statement. And I'm going to explain what that means because it sounds daunting. But where we're going is that we want to think about the idea of the augmented reality of sin. What makes us anxious, angry, tired, afraid, or depressed, it's worthwhile to take note of the different kind of life we live now when we confess and commit our lives to Jesus. We live in a new reality, standing firm in the conviction, in the mission, along with the hope we have in our future home with Jesus. We are signs to the watching world of the salvation for those who follow Jesus and the coming destruction for those who reject him. It's a lot going on in a very short amount of verses, but it is a beautiful picture that Paul is setting up. So to start, Philippians 1:19 through 24 says this: For I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed, but that I will continue to be bold for Christ. For I have been in the past. And I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ, whether I live or die. For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is better, even better. But if I live, I can do more fruitful work for Christ. So I don't know which is better. I am torn between two desires. I long to go and be with Christ, which would be far better for me, but for your sakes, it is better that I continue to live. How many of you feel like this? Life throws so much at you. So, like, when you see this picture on the screen, do any of you feel a little bit of anxiety? When you get big choices in your life, what's the better option? Do you ever feel like just sitting down just for a moment and thinking, I don't want to do this. This is too much. There's so much going on in our lives. There's so many decisions that we have to make. I know every time I look at a menu that has like 50 options, I can never decide. Any of you feel that? I love those menus where there's like 2 options. I know Doner Kebab up the road has 2 options. Easy to pick your food there, if you like that. I do. I endorse it. But it's easy to shut down when there's so much. What keeps Paul going is that he keeps the main thing the main thing. Paul's mind was fixed on the already but not yet deliverance he has in Jesus. He lived a life that was radically against Christianity, but was also radically for the glory of God. He just didn't have the full picture, and he let go of the things in the past that he did wrong and held on to the thing that was the main thing. Despite his circumstances as well, whether he was imprisoned or accepted, insulted, praised, beaten, or whatever, Paul recognized that his hope and his life are directed towards Jesus. They changed his outlook. He was no longer intimidated by the vast amount of paths in front of him. Paul was supported by prayer as well as the Spirit in his troubles, and we can learn that we cannot do this alone, just as Paul came to know over time. Paul held on to a certain kind of confession as well. Radical kind of speech changed his life. This Greek word, pareihesia. Let's try that. Pareihesia. It's a mouthful. It means complete boldness. You'll see that in your text in most translations. But it's a word that means to have all presence, or it's the Greek equivalent of saying freedom of speech. We love that. Constitution is great. Freedom of speech is familiar to us, where we can have our opinions and say them too. It's great to have that kind of freedom. But this is a different kind of freedom that's being mentioned here. This freedom Paul is talking about is public speech without the fear of others, authorities, or tyrants who are against them. It exposes one to danger, but holds fast to convictions. Paul holds on to his convictions despite his danger, and it did not allow him to it did not drive him to give into temptation or to throw out the gospel, which is why he says he does not want to be ashamed of what he started out with. When you have somebody that disagrees with you, it's much easier to agree with them, so it does not start conflict. If you have somebody who says they are radically against God, they are radically against Christianity, radically against the church in your workplace, the easier thing to do is either to be quiet or to say something that is against what you believe. It's easier to do that. And I like this story of Cassie Bernal. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she was a victim of the Columbine shooting a while back. And she had the assailant threatening her life, asking her a question before she died, saying, "Do you believe in Jesus?" And she said, "Yes." It is much easier to say no in those moments. But this is the kind of example of a radical kind of freedom of speech, when you promote a radical kind of truth, even in the face of evil, even in the face of threat, even in the face of shame. This is the kind of freedom of speech I'm talking about here, and the kind of confession that Paul is living out. The kind of conviction that he's living out is a success that's redefined. He talks about that to live is Christ and to die is gain. The world's understanding is to live is gain, to die is Christ. And that also sounds like a great sentiment. It doesn't sound like anything's wrong with that. We can go through our lives and live successful lives and then go home to Jesus. That sounds great, right? Any of you want to have good health? Any of you want to have lots of money? Good house, success for your kids in the future? That sounds great, right? Scripture's not against that. But that's not the point. Success looks different for Paul, and sometimes it looks like failure by the world's standards. When you follow Jesus, then it's living for Jesus, and dying is being in the presence of Jesus. Paul still considered it success to be in jail. Does that sound right? Not by the world's standards. Paul still counted it good to be beaten, to be hurt, because he was a testimony to people, and he was able to reach many different people. He was able to go all the way to Rome and stand before the emperor. Why would you have an audience before the emperor unless you had this kind of situation happen? Paul understands that what he's done up to this point is marked by his confession, and now he lives fully by his conviction, and he sacrifices his preferences by his mission. Have any of you seen the movie Inside Out before? I think it's a fun movie. It's about all these emotions inside of our heads, and they all have different personalities according to, like, joy is joyful, anger is angry, so on and so forth. And there's like 5 different main emotions. And this kiddo named Riley, she moves from Minnesota, and I forget where she moves to. Bear with me. She moves far away. She leaves her friends, and her head is just filled with a lot of stress. And it feels like things are falling apart in her life. So she starts losing memories that were very important to her. And the character that's right in the front, Joy, the one with the blue hair, she goes on this mission to find something to keep her going. And they end up in this dark pit where things are going to be forgotten. Pink elephant behind Joy. His name is Bing Bong. I love it. It's Riley's former imaginary friend. And what's fun about Bing Bong, he's almost forgotten, but he's still caring deeply for Riley. And they go on this big mission to save her. And in order to get out of this chasm, they're trying to fly up to the top. But the only way that they can get up to the top is if he hops off. To sacrifice himself, but to stay on mission. And they get up to the top, and Joy is looking down, and all this fading pink elephant can say is, go save Riley. I remember I cry at this scene, and my wife cries at this scene every time just because it hits hard. But what you see here is that the mission is staying in tune. Paul moves from a Romans 6:6 mentality, which says, we know that our old self was crucified with him in order that the body of sin might be brought to nothing, so that we would no longer be enslaved to sin. And he moves to a Romans 12:1-2 mentality. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Paul gave up a lot. C.S. Lewis writes in his book, The Weight of Glory, or essay, The Weight of Glory, he says, "It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures fooling around with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum, rather because he cannot imagine what it's meant by an offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased." This idea that living for Christ and dying is gain is scary in a way, because we're holding on to different things in this world. Paul went through some horrible times, but what he has is far greater now. His desires have become greater as the augmented reality of sin was traded for the reality of Jesus. He was able to see that Jesus did something far different to him than anything he could accrue in this world. He saw that every thought, every word, and every action that deserved punishment was paid for by Jesus on the cross. And when he rose from the grave, defeating sin and death, even the death that is to come, even as he sits in jail, not knowing what is to come, he did not allow that to bind him, because he knew Jesus has already won. That's the kind of hope that he hangs on to. So what he calls the Philippians to in verses 25 through 28 is this: "Knowing this, I am convinced that I will remain alive, so I can continue to help all of you grow and experience the joy of your faith. And when I come to you again, you will have even more reason to take pride in Christ Jesus because of what he is doing through me. Above all, you must live as citizens of heaven, conducting yourselves in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ. Then, whether I come and see you again or only hear about you, I will know that you are standing together with one spirit and one purpose, fighting together for the faith, which is the good news. Do not be intimidated in any way by your enemies. This will be a sign for them as they are going to be destroyed, and that you are going to be saved, even by God himself." Paul uses a lot of military language in this short passage here. Philippi is a Roman outpost where they had this big hill and they're able to see out very far. They're always ready for battle. They're always ready to go where the threat is. Paul is calling the Philippians to conduct themselves in a manner where they are of one spirit and one mind, fixed on the main thing. They are called to stand firm. If you call yourself a Christian, your home is in heaven, and your place is with Jesus. While you are here, it is not a matter of skipping through life and rushing to the eternal. But much like the Israelite exiles in the Old Testament, we are resident aliens. Can you say that word with me? Or that phrase? Resident aliens. Sounds funny. C.S. Lewis quoted that, just saying that while we're here on earth, what we do matters. The kind of influence that we have around other people matters. We are not of this world anymore because we have our home with Jesus. But while we are here, what we do matters. Paul commanded the Philippians to conduct themselves, to keep the main thing, and to stand firm in the face of opposition with a grounded faith. He also talked about how the church is a sign of salvation and destruction. Paul tells us that the church is a sign of salvation when it seems, which is seen by the test of time, and even when things are the worst, the church still stands. Jesus says this in Matthew 16:18, "And I tell you that you are Peter." He talks to Peter here. He's not talking to anybody else. Yeah. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. And that sounds kind of funny. The gates of Hades will not overcome it. What does that mean? Anybody know? I'll tell you. The gates of Hades is saying that death, an enemy, Satan, will not crush the church. Evil will not quash the church. The church has stood the test of time for 2,000 plus years now. And it is a beautiful testament that Jesus has won. His body stands. No matter where you are in this world, his body still stands. It is also a sign of destruction. For the enemy, be it death, the devil, and those against Christ who have rejected him and seek the destruction of the church. If you look up any news about persecution around the world, particularly in Africa and India right now, I see so much news coming out of there. How people are being hunted down. Christianity is not allowed. I've seen church services happen and people of other faiths come and surround them, beat them, and say, renounce your faith. And they choose to continue standing firm. How do you do that? They understood that the church is a sign of their salvation, and it is also a sign of the enemy's destruction. It's a lot. And to top it off, Paul also talks about a theology of suffering. He says, for you have been given not only the privilege of trusting in Christ, but also the privilege of suffering for him. Sound fun, guys? We are in this struggle together. You have seen my struggle in the past, and you know that I am still in the midst of it. And I want you guys to remember, it's the idea that we are called to keep calm because you have won the prize. Suffering for the sake of suffering is not what he's talking about here. It is, frankly, life is full of suffering. We're part of a sinful and fallen world. The augmented reality of sin is still prevalent. It is all over. No matter where you look, it seems like something's wrong. This theology of suffering shifts our kind of mentality. Because, here's an example. How many of you have worked retail before? I have. Almost 10 years. It was really fun. One of the things that always grated me is I always tried to follow all the rules. But there was always that one employee who never followed the rules and got all the privileges. They always got all the leniency, and I was looked at and told, you're not enough. Any of you ever experienced that or see that? I don't know if that's too relatable, but what I see is the more you follow rules, the more you follow truth, the more things get difficult because you are held to a higher standard. This theology of suffering that's mentioned here is standing in steadfast truth even when people are against it and want to see truth destroyed. The unique privilege that you have with this kind of suffering, that you are privileged to have, is that you are a sign, you are a testament of the church that stands forever. You are the reality that people see and the world cannot get rid of. You are the sign of salvation and the sign of destruction. You are the sign that Jesus has won. That's what matters. Suffering is not fun. But suffering for truth shows that you are a unique sign that you are part of Jesus. So when Paul says to live is Christ and to die is gain, it's big. What it means is you are living radically different. You are not following this augmented reality of sin where wherever you look, something is wrong. You are looking at what is right and what God is doing differently in this world. You are not marked by your past. You are not marked by the evil of this world anymore. If you choose to follow Jesus, your life radically changes. At this time, Ignite can come up. My challenge to you as you think about Hartford, as you think about your workplaces, as you think about your families, as you think about your friends, I challenge you, take out your phone right now. Literally take out your phone. Open up your calendar. Pick a day this week before next Sunday. Put an event or an alarm in there and just type in Luke 10:2. Luke 10:2 says this, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." This verse means God has already won. The harvest means the crop is already done. The laborers are us, with a brilliant opportunity to be able to love the people around us and show the light of Jesus to the watching world, to Hartford. And the goal is so that Hartford will stand as a sign of salvation to the watching world, as a bastion of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's a big call, but what it means is that we are accepting that Jesus has won, and we are following where Jesus is calling us to next, friends. So if you'll join us in worship. If you need prayer, or if you have any questions about Jesus Christ, Butch will be up here. Scott is in the back. And I will be up here. We would be happy to talk with you. And yeah, if you'll join us in worship.